don't know how to put this into words, Phil, but the other night Kobe Bryant scored 60 points. And a tweet I read was that, in a way, it encapsulated his entire career. I mean, what did you think of that game? I can't get it out of my head.
I mean, he took 50 shots to do it, yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
the most since 1975, most shots. So
I mean, to me, it epitomizes how this season was kind of a wash. I think I think it kind of worked in both their best favors, because the Lakers, to move on, need that high draft pick, which ironically actually goes to the 76ers if it's 4 or lower. So they're really hoping for a top 3 pick. And this is Kobe's farewell tour. I mean, if they had it's interesting, right? Because imagine they were contending right now, how much Kobe would be playing. I think that would be tough, because how broken Kobe is. Like yes, 60 points is a big deal, but how much were they actually guarding him? They were just watching him score in a lot of this. And he took a ton. Like I'm not saying it wasn't talented what he did, of course, but it's just it was very me at the end, and it kind of was. It was fitting because their team was in the situation they were, and they really needed that kind of a good feel, especially after the whole D'Angelo Russell, Nick Young thing.
Well, I mean, a few things. We got to look at the other side of the court. Utah found out an hour before that they were eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, so they did not care at all. I mean, they only had a few starters out there. It was just so lackadaisical from their part. And Kobe looked horrible at the start. Like the first 5 minutes, he had jitters. He wasn't making anything. But the electricity in that arena since an hour before the game, I mean, just seeing people like Jack Nicholson there, all the old timers, Arsenio Hall, it was just like star-studded to the nines. I mean, they're selling gold-plated hats, things like that.
I think they made like $1.4 million worth of Kobe gear just at the Staples Center that night.
I mean, the whole Mamba out hashtag. I mean, he planned out to say that line, and Magic Johnson calling the best Laker ever, which is highly disputable, by the way. I mean, he's definitely a top 5 Laker. But I mean, looking back at 20 years in the NBA, I mean, he was drafted by Charlotte. And, you know, rumor has always been that he and his dad and his agent really power played to get him, Jerry West, get him to play for the Lakers. I mean, what do you think from the very beginning there?
Yeah, well, I remember him being traded for Vlade Divac, and then him going to play with that Lakers team, who at the time had, Eddie Jones, who played a very similar position. And, you know, I think they knew how talented he was going to be, and Vlade was on the way down. I mean, I wouldn't really doubt it, someone with that big of a name, but that's not that strange. I mean, we've seen other players come in the past saying, I don't want to play for this team, I don't want to play for this. I mean, remember Steve Francis when he was drafted by the then Vancouver Grizzlies, forcing his way in a trade to the Rockets. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there was probably a bit of a power play, but but he's a star. I think that would happen anyways. But it would have very much changed his career. I mean, to me, you know, he's always played with a lot of talent, and not trying to take away from him, but you know, playing with Shaq is a big deal. You know, if he was in Charlotte on a rebuilding team, and even when Shaq was gone, playing with Bynum and Pau Gasol, because remember, both of those were like top 3 at their position at the time. He's always played with extremely talented bigs whenever he actually won, and when he didn't have those, he didn't win. Yeah.
So, I mean, I want to look at the men as a whole, and I think one of those kind of asterisks or whatever you want to say with him is the rape trial in Colorado. And I think that's always going to linger over him. It's going to be this unspoken thing. Not a lot of guys get that type of public exposure to life outside the game.
No. Yeah, well, I mean, like there was a whole story of how he actually grew a lot of his fandom in China at that time, trying to find some sympathetic ears. And it's always been something that kind of followed him. And I mean, with all these stories, half of you was thinking, you know, did it just get brushed under the table because he's a superstar? Did it actually happen? Who knows? But, you know, he's been one of those guys. I mean, when you're that big of a name, your name is going to be everywhere. So it's not that surprising that he was as popular as he was. But that was definitely the point. Like I think people really wanted to forget about it and have made a conscious effort to forget about that. Like there's a lot of players who have done negative things or been accused of doing negative things that has really haunted their career. And he actually played the PR game really well off that.
It's weird. My friend Sam was saying that, you know, if you look at his background, he grew up rich. He grew up mostly in Italy. You know, he speaks 3 foreign languages, came back to Philadelphia for high school. But, whenever he played in Philadelphia, he was mostly hated, mostly jeered, really had no sense of home, built a career out of really tenacity, just this crazy work ethic, you see these interviews with Kevin Durant and guys like Steve Nash, and they both call him an a-hole. Like they both use the same word, and it's just kind of, I think he's one of the most polarizing guys. And I mean, we talk about LeBron being polarized, but I think Kobe's the same. You really, there's no in between. He's got these crazy haters and like as a villain, and he's got these guys who just absolutely love him to death. I would say when I walk around Montreal where we live, Kobe is probably the most seen jersey I see on the streets of our city.
Yeah, it's probably up there. I mean, I see a lot of Vince Carter as well, hence what Justin was wearing there. But I think to me, he is a polarizing player. I mean, I hate to compare and contrast, but I've always kind of seen him in a weird way, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me, as a bigger Allen Iverson. In weird ways. Like I think he had that type of mentality. And I think that's and I think that's why teams around him had to been very central on him. I mean, people want to compare against Jordan and all that, and yeah, there are some similarities, height and weight and all that stuff. But I don't know. I think he had that personality that it's very situational. Like had he been in Charlotte, not had Phil Jackson, not had Shaquille O'Neal, I don't know the level of success he would have had aside from that. There's a lot of talented guys who come through the league. I mean, I'm not saying it's on the same level, but just look at a guy like J.R. Smith. Imagine he had Kobe Bryant's mentality. I think we'd be talking about a multiple-time All-Star in terms of all his skill set. And with Phil Jackson's ability to calm down, make him see the big picture, and also playing with Shaquille O'Neal, you learned saying, I see him. He is so dominant. I'm going to pass him the ball. It's kind of like the whole Westbrook Durant thing, how Westbrook understands he wants to shoot, but he still sees Durant. And he's like, this is such a talented player. I can't not pass it to him. I think I wouldn't say lucky for situation. I think they surrounded him with the right people. But I think it definitely mattered because when those guys were gone and he was left to his own devices, I don't know how he had that call to win. Like I think he had the ability, like we saw in the last game, to come back and be an individual performer. But yeah, I don't know. To me, he's always been that bigger Allen Iverson. He's always had that work ethic, and his polarizing aspect is like, what does the context mean to him as a whole?
Yeah, and you brought up MJ, and I think some people hold it against him that he's based a lot of his offensive career based on, let's say, borrowing moves from Michael. I mean, he's been studying game film since he was 6 years old. Apparently his uncle's grandfather used to send him VHS tapes to Italy to watch guys. So, but also on the defensive end, I mean, it's got to be mentioned, I think he was first team All-NBA defense 9 times, something like that, which is ridiculous. I mean, but I want to talk about a few things that have kind of been, I don't know, just kind of lost in the shuffle. In 2008, he was ridiculous for Team USA in the Olympics. He basically took over the gold medal game against Spain with the last 2 minutes to go and scored like 3 threes, something like that, to get the gold. But got to mention this. No one ever talks about this. He didn't play 1 minute for Team USA before the age of 30. He didn't give any of his life to his country that way. And no one's ever really held him accountable for that. I mean, obviously you have the option, but in his prime, he really didn't play for the team at all. What else? I mean, what else stands out to you about Kobe that's not really talked about much?
I mean, I think I don't say that's such a public life since he was 17, 18, right? And he's played so many minutes before the age of 30, considering all the playoffs, all the All-Stars, and all the rest, that I don't actually criticize him for. To me, it kind of felt like a bit of an ego grab, because to me, like I always said, players should be allowed to play in the Olympics until they're like 30, and then the older players shouldn't be allowed to allow it to be a younger guy's game. And so, like, I feel like that the farewell tour and all this is, I don't think there's a mistake he chose to stay in LA. I know there were rumors about him possibly being traded to Detroit for Tayshaun Prince and Rip Hamilton.
Dallas. Mark Cuban was saying Dallas nearly went down.
Yeah, there was I think Josh Howard and Jason Terry in 2006, one that he almost said like he had that for sure, and then someone said no, which would have put Dirk and Kobe in their primes together, which would have been interesting. And there was also Chicago Bulls almost trade. There was the Clippers trade in or signing around that time as well, which people kind of forget about. He was almost a Clipper, but you know he's a Los Angeles guy. He doesn't shy away like. He's kind of like Magic Johnson, the way that he likes that attention. You know, like how some guys like Larry Bird would be more like a Kevin Durant personality. Kobe Bryant's more of the Magic Johnson. He likes being in LA. He likes the attention. I don't think there's any surprise that he's having this Derek Jeter type farewell tour where guys, you know, who are much quieter kind of go out into the sunset in their own way. He liked the attention. He liked the pressure. He liked the hate. He liked this. This is all very normative of him. And I think that's the type of guy who people love to hate and cheer for, because he's the guy who doesn't care. He lives life by his own volition, but at the same time, it's not the way everyone else does it. And I think as much as anything else, I'll remember Kobe Bryant for doing things his own way in the NBA.
Do you have any one moment that stands out to you?
I really miss his afro in the dunk contest. That was really it. I mean, so many. I mean, his jersey pulling, his yelling, his honestly though, for me, it was his behind the scenes work. There's a lot of documentaries around that, and it's literally just, I think that's a huge deal. I cover, you know, the draft and guys like this all the time, and the difference between guys who make and guys who don't is that what quintessential Mamba mode. And I think that's a term that's going to stick around for a while. Yeah. And I think that's the difference between players who make and players who don't.
I was on the radio the other day and I said one moment that always stood out to me about Kobe was the All-Star game was in Los Angeles. I think it was 3 or 4 seasons ago, and Blake and Lob City was just on the come up, then kind of on the the cusp of what they're doing right now. And they asked him, Kobe, in an interview before the All-Star game, they said, are you going to hand over the keys of the city to Blake and Lob City? He said, yeah, of course, they can have it. They can have the city. And then he went out and scored like 40. That was Kobe for it. He'd say one thing and do another. He's always a mystery. And I don't think we'll ever unravel him. I think he's going to get a statue in front of Staples Center. I think that's inevitable. He'll get the jersey or jerseys retired. What do you think? What kind of pose he should have on that statue?
I really want that pull. It's nice. It's concise. It's just like the like pulling on his jersey and just yelling. I think that is just him. That or like the stare down crossover. I don't know. There's so many iconic. It's just like to emphasize that passion. I think it's passion more than any shot. I would have to go that way.
Yeah, for me, there's a great pic of him doing a reverse dunk, looking at the rim excitedly. He was that type of player, that once-a-generation player, and we'll never see anything like him again. Love him or hate him, Kobe Bryant, he went out with a bang. He went in with a bang, went out with a bang, and we'll probably never see this guy again. Wonderful career. Congratulations, Kobe.